few weeks ago, we discussed the Maimer Chazal. There's a number of Maimorei Chazal in Masechta Sanhedrin and other places discussing different signs of things that will happen before Moshiach will come. So, one of the more interesting Maimorei Chazal, which doesn't seem to have an explanation on the surface, so to say, is a Maimer Chazal in Sanhedrin. It says that Ein ben David ba and she's bakish da kotten l'chayla v'lo yimotzei. That before Mashiach comes, they'll try to find a fish. Another version says a small fish for a sick person, and they won't be able to find it. Shnamar, he brings a pasuk. The pasuk is in Yecheskel. Yecheskel Hanavi is describing the downfall of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, Egypt, was a big superpower. If you read in the Nach, there was, you had Mitzrayim, you had Ashur.
Sorry, just by the way, so they say they found the skeleton in the Yamsuf recently. They are all big men, many of wagons.
They say that, just meaning they say that archaeologists found the bones of the 7 cows on the bank of the Nile River. He just wasn't sure if it was the lean cows or the fat cows. Whatever.
Okay.
But, so, no. So, Mitzrayim was a big superpower. I mean, we're not talking about it in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, but even later, you have in Tanakh, Eretz Yisrael was always right in between Ashur and Mitzrayim, the two superpowers. Used to try, sometimes they're clashing with one another. So the pasuk speaks about the downfall of Mitzrayim through Bavel, that Nebuchadnezzar, he conquered Egypt. So it says there that the Eibishter Oza Shkia Meimeyam, in the prophecy he's describing how Mitzrayim prided themselves with the Nile. The Nile River was their source of agricultural, their irrigation for their agriculture. So it's describing their pasuk how the rivers of Mitzrayim were always hustling and bustling. People and animals were always going through, so the water wasn't clear. The water was was cloudy with mud and other things that comes from human and animal traffic. But it says that since Mitzrayim will be destroyed, so Azashkia Meimeyam, the waters will be, all the garbage will sink down. The waters will be clear. Vanaroisam kashemen oilich, and their rivers will be like oil, which also means, some commentators explain, it'll be as clear as oil. In other words, there'll be no one there, so all the garbage, like this, when people and animals are walking, so there's a mess in the water. There's the bottom of the ocean, the bottom of the mud at the bottom always gets mixed in with the water. But since it will be desolate, so it will be clear water. That's the pshat of the pasuk. So the Gemara interprets the pasuk to mean that there won't be any fish in the sea as well. So the water, Rashi uses the word that they're kfuyin. I think, I don't know, people explain that they're frozen. I think what Rashi means kfuyin is that the waters will be clear, so there's no fish there either. Now, this Maimer Chazal seems to be a very, very not understood. Like it's what's Bechlal going on over here. Now, there's many explanations. Mostly al derech haremez, mostly the way of hint. I'll start. There's, once you go into the realm of remez, of hints, there's many various approaches that are discussed. One that seemingly has nothing to do with the other, but I'll try to cover some of the explanations. The Marsha, on one of the more classic commentaries on this Maimer Chazal, he's first of all, the Gemara says, what's the connection with Moshiach? Says one pasuk says that the rivers will be clear, and then the Gemara says afterwards, that Ozat Smiach Keren, whatever the Lashon is, then the Eibush will sprout forth salvation for the Jewish people. So Marsha says, first of all, the Psukim are not next to each other. One pasuk is actually, the pasuk about Mashiach coming is actually a few chapters earlier. So the Marsha says that it seems the Pshat in the Gemara is, the meaning of the Gemara is that this pasuk about the rivers being clear speaks about the downfall of Egypt, And in another similar prophecy, speaking about the downfall of Egypt, it speaks about the coming of Moshiach. So from there we see there's a connection between the two, even though they might not be saying, might not be written right one next to each other. But he brings, there's an interesting Maimer Chazal that says that by the time of Golus, I think by the first base Hamikdash, all the fish, says Eretz Yisrael is Pasha desolate. The Gashmias, for a number of years. It says all animals, even the birds, they had nowhere to be. It says even all the fish, they went into Golus, they went into exile. And there was none left. Then they came back later, I think, when they didn't return. So he says that he seems to interpret the Gemara the same way. We're talking here about the river of Egypt, and the fish will return to Eretz Yisrael. So the fish originated from there. And it's a remez, it doesn't elaborate much, but on the lines of the other Maimer Chazal, that when Yidden went into Galus, all the creatures went into Galus with them, Yidden will return to Eretz Yisrael, everything will return, the fish and so on will all return to Eretz Yisrael, so they won't be found in the rivers of Mitzrayim. That's how he explains Mshat. There's, on a similar note, but with a bit of a different angle, the Abar B'Neil. The Abar B'Neil was one of the classic commentators on Torah, on Nach, on Nevi'im, Ksuvim. Particularly when it comes to Mashiach, he was one of the people that wrote a number of books explaining inside the Psukim, the Nevuos, the prophecies. He goes through a whole sefer collecting all the different prophecies and elaborating upon them. And also different Maimarei Chazal, particularly those Maimarei Chazal that seem to be, a lot of it he deals with, Christians try to interpret certain Maimarei Chazal about Mashiach a certain way. He wrote those sefers, not censored, but they try to prove their, those messianic verses in the sages. But even Maimarei Chazal, there's different things, that
Even too, it's going also.
It all started from Yidden. Yeah, I'm saying, but he was before Shabtai. He was dealing with the Christians. But anyway, he was a very big writer. He discussed a lot of different inyanim about Mashiach. So he discusses this Maimer Chazal as well. And he gives two approaches. He says one in Pshat and one in a metaphoric way. He says in Pshat, he says that the same way, before, when Yidden left Mitzrayim, the Eibusher brought 10 plagues to punish the Egyptians. So the same way, before the final redemption, there'll also be they'll also kimei tzeitz chameres Mitzrayim eren nufleis. The pasuk says the same miracles that happened before they left Mitzrayim will happen when they go out of Mitzrayim. So he says, go out of the final Golus. He says the same thing is that before when the Yidden will go out of Golus, so Mitzrayim, not exactly whatever the exact explanation is why Mitzrayim, I guess one of the nations that played a role in subjugation, the Jewish people, they will also be punished again. Sure, there's another Midrashim that says that the 10 Makkos will happen on Edom, on Rome. But either way, in other words, the point is that this shows under the destruction, same way, what was the first Makkah? The first of the 10 plagues was that the Nile was turned into blood. Since the Nile was turned into blood, the pasuk says that all the fish died. It stunk up the Nile. So it says similarly when Mashiach will come, a similar thing will happen, that the river of Mitzrayim, and maybe you could extend it to other areas that subjugated the Jews, will be struck, and there won't be any fish available. That is his way of explaining it in Pshat, and in the way of this to them. As he says, it's al derech to makas dam, that there was no fish left in the Nile. Al derech Mitzrayim. He speaks about Mitzrayim. Maybe you could say the same thing as other nations that hurt the Jews. They'll also suffer a similar makkah as a way of punishment. In the way of remez, he says an interesting thing. He says that the Chachamim were speaking in hints. They didn't want to say exactly what they were saying. They were meant to say. What they meant to say is that he won't find a fish, he meant to say no Egyptian will be left alive. Why? So he says that fish is a metaphor. We have dog and fish swallow up one another. That's it says Haman was happy when the lots came to Adar, because the mazel of Adar is fish. It says fish, a bigger fish swallows up a smaller fish. So he was happy. He said, "I'll swallow up the Jews." Really, he was going to be swallowed up. But either way, so that fish is a subtle hint for nations that are conquering and eating up each other. So it says that when Mashiach will come, he was trying to say they wanted to speak in hints. They didn't want to be. They didn't want to be open. But again, he says, speaking particularly about Mitzrayim, Egypt, he says that the Chachamim, which said the Smaimur Chazal, were afraid. I guess they were. He writes that they were maybe under the rulership of Egypt or whatever the associated countries. So they didn't say exactly what they meant, but he meant to say that there will be no fish, means that they will all be swallowed up and killed by other nations. It's not tzanzer. It was he said al-chatchil in the way of a hint. Zonish chapen was
There was things that would change.
Yeah. So he says, what does it mean l'choila for a sick person? He says you could say it's going on the Yidden that are sick in Gola. So Eivish will make that there won't be any fish. Any Egyptians, anyone, I guess that particular, again, he's focusing, because the Pasuk is focusing on Egypt, he's focusing that these psukim are a punishment for Egypt in particular. I guess they played also some type of role in, today, there's also Egyptians are shtickle, whatever,
Not the same nation.
not the same nation, still the same.
Place is Mitzrayim as it was then.
Been breaking apart in one of the countries and how they kept up
Fine, and that is the approach of the Barbanel. There is also a very interesting beer of the Maram of Prague. The Maram of Prague discusses his Gemara, and he interprets it based on one of a key component of his explaining a lot of Maimorei Chazal dealing with the end period right before Mashiach comes. There's many Maimorei Chazal which explain how things are going to be not the best, So one of the key components of his philosophy, he explains that Mashiach is a totally new type of world. It's a Havoyah Chadosh, so to say. It's a new creation, it's a new existence. Before you have a new Havoyah, before you have a new existence, you need to have a header. You need to have, a stage in between where the previous existence is diminished, is nullified, and then you can have a new beginning. It's in the way of a metaphor. We all know what Chassidus says about you put a kernel of wheat in the ground before it grows. It has to get rotten, it has to lose itself. So before every new particularly talking about Mashiach, the whole world will be a completely new world. So there has to be that all previous existence, so to say, loses itself. That will be a preparation for the, for the new creation. The whole, whatever you want to call it, the way the world will be when Mashiach will come. So he gives a very interesting point. He says fish are the least affected than all other creatures. He gives an example by the Mabul. By the Mabul, all humans, all animals, all birds, besides those that were taken to the table, were extinct, were wiped out. With one exception, the fish. The fish were not hurt. Why? First of all, they were in the water, but so the flood didn't. Obviously, the flood couldn't kill them. But it also shows. He explained that fish are the furthest away from, in other words, within the realm of humanity and things associated with human beings, with this world. So animals, birds are more connected with the person. Fish are the most remote. They live in their own, in the sea. So he says, the chiddush here is that even fish, which, in other words, in order for Mashiach to come, in order for there to be a new Havaya, a new creation, so every single detail of the previous world has to be nullified, including those details that, so to say, are the most, usually the most unaffected, the most remote from human, from human interaction, so to say. Even that will be completely, will be lost as a preparation for the completely, new creation of Mashiach. That's interesting. So again, what exactly, with the thought of the Maral, it's hard to know if it means literally or metaphorically. What exactly does it mean? But in other words, the point is that all of creation will undergo some type of transformational period will they lose their previous existence as a preparation for Mashiach. That's the explanation of the Maral Prague. There are a number of other explanations.
In other words, even the fish.
Even the fish. The Chiddush is, in other words, even the fish. Yeah. There are a number of other explanations al derech haremez. I'll say some of them. One interesting, Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz and others, I think, say interesting words. We know that everything that, Chassidus Kabbalah explains that the neshamas that need a tikkun, a lot of them get megulgal, a lot of them get, however you say it in English, reincarnated in different animals and different birds. So it says the neshamas hatzadikim, the most refined neshamas, they get megulgal in fish. They get it says it's there are many stories. There's different stories of tzaddikim that how they went. They've got a stafka fish, l'chavet Shabbos, the whole thing. It's the mice, and one of the rabbis, and the Tzaddik Rabbi Marash, someone was eating fish and he got a bone caught in his throat. He said an expression, "Neshamas tzaddikim darfen wissen wie zu essen." You have to know how to eat neshamas of tzaddikim. It's an only thing that the fish is the most refined creature. So those neshamas of tzaddikim, they're not going to get in the Google. They're not going to come back down incarnated in a low creature. They'll get fish. It's an easy tikkun. So he also doesn't need shchita. So he says, what does it mean? It means it's a hint that only tzaitzis, all sparks will be refined. Even fish, even the nitzutas that are in fish, which are the most, they need the smallest amount of rectification. It's not like taking it's the most refined beater. Even that you won't find. In other words, there won't be any need of recti. In other words, it shows how everything will be completely refined. It's an interesting word to Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz. There is Chasam Sofer gives his interpretation al derech haremez.
According to the Goyim, I don't know how much of where the Goyim says this concept has apocalypse, but you may be touching that. But what exactly, according to Torah?
What's you have to.
In between. Apocalypse is the end of the world.
So
it looks like
they learn. I touch something upon it. They learn the way. I'm not a big philosopher. I didn't do much research. According to Torah, in other words, like this. According to Torah, the truth is there are a number of sources that could support to some degree that there will be. In other words, the way they look at it is that the world will come to an end. According to Torah, whatever is going to happen is just as a preparation to bring in, to bring in a higher level. So in other words, it's not pshat that the world is coming to an end, the end of days. Pshat is
stage.
Right. So first of all, it could happen in many ways. There's no one set of rules how it has to happen. It's very unclear how it happens. Now you have prophecies of many nations being destroyed and so on and so forth, but it's not considered as a goal unto its own to destroy them. But it's some nations, because of what they did and whatever, like Amalek, it will be destroyed. It has no tikkun, it has no rectification. But I think the Jewish approach, some things, obviously everyone is going to bring proofs from the Tanakh, but the Jewish understanding of it, I think, is fundamentally different based on the little bit that you're saying. Even Gog and Magog is not considered the end of the world. It's considered the end of the world as we know it. That this war will bring about a transformation, but not that. At any rate, there's a Chasam Sofer gives it. Also, it's all al derech haremez. He says that fish. We know we go to Tash. The Rosh is coming up. What's unique about fish? That fish always keep their eyes open when they sleep, which means the Eibush is ain't a pkicha. You have in the Zoya that the Eibush is always watching the Yidden. So he said that before Mashiach comes, it will appear as if there's no one to watch over the Jewish people. There's no leadership. There's even a dog cotton, I guess. Someone that's the Eibush is ain't a pkicha. The Eibush is watchful eye. Obviously, will look like the Eibush is Yidden will be in such tzara, so the Eibush is watchful eye will be hidden away. You won't see it. So now, like when it hits rock bottom, expression goes, that's when Mashiach comes. If you don't see, it looks like Yidden are suffering, there's no one that's helping. It's like the pasuk, the end of Hazinu. Kira kaz v'asiyot v'efes asur v'as, and Eibush like it will appear that there's no hope. That's when Mashiach will come. There's another interesting explanation which I don't want to spend too much time on, but a number of the Ramami Panuk Deli Yisrael, they interpret this Maimer Chazal as a hint to Mashiach ben Yosef. Moshiach ben Yosef, I'm sure most of you heard about. They don't want to elaborate upon it. It's a subject onto its own. Would need a few shurim on its own. But there's a concept. The Zohar speaks about it. Even Chassidus speaks about it here and there. The Gemara mentions it of Moshiach ben Yosef. It doesn't have to be, but there's a concept of Moshiach ben Yosef that will come. He will wage wars. Will be a forerunner of Moshiach ben David. And the Gemara brings it down. The Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara brings it down. Sure. Doesn't elaborate much upon it. Now the Psadi going says he doesn't have to come. It could be it'll happen this way. It doesn't mean it'll have to happen this way. But there's the Zohar speaks about it. There's the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef, on a very simple level, is more the fighter. The Mashiach ben David is more the one that comes in and he brings final salvation to the world. Mashiach ben Yosef will start fights, but he'll wage wars. However you want to put it, he'll wage wars, but at the end he will be killed, according to whatever Arizal says to Daven, he shouldn't be killed. It's a whole. I don't want to get into many details here, but he'll be a forerunner. His death will atone the sins of the Jewish people. Mashiach ben David will come. So he says, I'll quote the Ramami Panu. He says, interesting thing. We know that before the Yidden left Mitzrayim, there was a number of years before, there was a group of Jews from the tribe of Ephraim that broke loose. They fought their way out of Egypt, and they were killed by the Plishtim. Discussed in a number of sources. So they were led by a person who identifies him by the name of Avadin. Avadin with the Ayin. Ayin Vez Dal Vav Nun. So he says this Avadin was killed. He says Bar Kochva was a Gilgal of this Avadin, and also he attempted to be Mashiach, and he got killed. No, but it's hinted in Ma'amar Chazal mentioned it. It's hinted in a number of psukim. That says the Mason Shechia Yecheskel, the story in Tanakh where Yecheskel and Navi revived a whole bunch of dead people, according to one opinion, I think were the Bnei Ephraim that pushed their way out. So he says that. No, not the whole time. There was a few thousand. Yeah, but there was a number of 40,000. I forget the number that's brought. But anyway, so then Bar Kochva was a Gilgal, and he also didn't rectify it. The final bidur will happen by Mashiach ben Yosef. He will be, Yosef is compared to a fish. We have the pasuk in Vayechi, how Yaakov compared Nash and Ephraim, Yidgul Aroiv, they'll multiply like fish. So then Mashiach ben Yosef is compared to a fish. What is the rectification is of what Mashiach ben Yosef has to do. No. In other words, there was an attempted redemption which wasn't successful. So Bar Kochva also was an attempted redemption. Mashiach ben Yosef will be an attempted redemption as well. He won't be the final thing, but it will lead into the redemption. So that, I guess, will be his final tikkun. So he says, Chayla's Mashiach ben David is called sick, or Yidden Mingalas are called sick. So when the fish is not found anymore, it means that Mashiach ben Yosef is killed. That's one way of looking at it. So then Mashiach will come. It's an interesting remez. I want to finish off. There's a beer of the Rebbe and the Rishimis. The Rebbe gives, here you see, the Rebbe gives a very geschmacke explanation. And the Rebbe says like this. The Rebbe says, Eklin Ismaim Chazal in two ways. One, the Rebbe says, Mashiach will either come in a generation that's completely righteous and a generation that's completely the opposite of that. So in each way, you can learn this Maimer Chazal. The Rebbe explains, what's the sick person mean? A sick person means, api chassidus, api spiritually, somebody that's full of sins, It says, there's a passage that speaks about someone full of sins, as someone that's full of blemishes from head to toe. What's the rectification of sin? Why does a person sin? Because he's not nullified to the Eibishter. What is the rectification of that fish? What does fish mean? Fish, as explained, is completely submerged in its source. Fish can't survive out of water, out of its source. Fish represents something that's completely nullified to its source. So in a person, the same way it says when you eat, one of the reasons, Pashut intellectually, the reasons why we don't eat different non-kosher animals, because by eating them, it gives us the trait of being predators, of being, wild. So similarly, eating fish brings a bittul to the person. They eat fish. So the Rebbe says it means the nation the Yidden are so sick in Golos, they're so sick of Avedas that they'll try to find the fish, they'll try to have a bittul, but they won't be able to find it. They won't, there's nothing helping them from the level of sickness, of sin, so they'll be, so the Yidden are Dersha Kulei Chayev, they're completely, Moshiach has to come. Then the Rebbe explains the same thing, mamish in the opposite way. The Rebbe says, on the total opposite way, sick doesn't mean you're sick of Aveda. Sick means chelas avad. Yidden are sick of love to the Eibusher. You have in Chassidus that even someone that has 49 gates of wisdom, but he's missing the 50th gate, chela is a numerical value of 49. So he has 49 gates of wisdom, he's missing the highest level of connection to the Eibusher, he's sick. And he's looking for a fish. The Rebbe says fish is bittul, but it's not the ultimate bittul. Because fish, it's in water, but it's still a separate entity. You haven't laws of I don't want to get into it. So the Rebbe says even the bittul of fish won't be good enough for them. What means they won't find fish? Even the level of bittul of fish won't be good enough. They want to have an ultimate bittul Eibusher. But that's a raya that they're completely righteous and Mashiach will come. Shap and take it from Yad Mamish.